I'm Teresa Tisha, and joining me today is Myra Caprarola. Today is Thursday, October 1st, 2009. Thank you, Myra, for being with us today and sharing your memories.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. This is exciting for us. Myra, we're going to start right off. What part of Carroll County were you born in?
I was born actually in Gettysburg.
Oh, you were?
Yes, but I grew up in Carroll County.
All right. Have you always lived in the Taneytown area all your life?
All but 7 years.
And where were you then?
Initially, when I was first married, we lived in the Sykesville area, and then we moved to Silver Run, and then back to Taneytown.
So you made kind of a little triangle in Carroll County.
Yes.
All right. And do you have any particular childhood memories that you remember that around the area that really stood out for you? Like, here's an example for me. I really remember that big old barn across from the 140 shopping center, and now that's where Superfresh is. And we used to go and we would do Easter hunts. Do you remember that big barn there?
Okay.
That's one of the location things that I miss that's no longer here. Do you have anything like that?
I miss the Taneytown Junior Senior High School.
Oh, where was that?
It was located off of Roberts Mill.
Okay.
Roberts Mill Road.
Huh. And it was a junior and a senior?
Yes, 7th through 12th.
Wow.
Yeah, and I did attend 7th and 8th grade, and then in 1969, I believe, we all went to Francis Scott Key High School. The schools merged, and there was a lot of rivalry between the two schools, and we did not find out till August of that school year that within 1 month we would be attending there.
No way.
Yeah, it was.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
That's exciting. Were you probably one of the first class to graduate from Key?
We were the first class that graduated combining the schools.
Which is like what happened at Winters Mill then.
Right.
What we saw with Winters Mill is what happened
We
at
were
Key. I didn't realize
freshmen that year, and then of course we finished as the first real graduating class of the schools merged.
Oh, that's exciting.
It was exciting.
I
I met my husband there, so it was very exciting. Yes.
And he's wonderful, because I've had the opportunity to meet him, and he's very nice. So have your parents passed down any stories about the area, or your grandparents? Do you remember anything that
Well, my grandmother was a school teacher.
Oh, she was?
She was a school teacher, and she really did that, of course, till she married, and then once married, you stayed home and kept house. But I was always intrigued how much education she received. She told me she graduated, taught school. They included more schooling for the normal time you would go, so she had to, after even teaching, went back to school again to finish like the last years, and then she was teaching again.
Oh my goodness.
So I thought that was quite interesting.
That is very interesting. That's very interesting. And what about your grandparents? Do you remember anything that they've passed on or told you when you were growing up, or?
Well, that was my grandmother.
Oh, that was your grandmother?
That was my grandmother.
Mother.
No, this was my grandmother, and that's why I thought for the time,
that's really
for being a school teacher, and you know, I have pictures of her carrying her little bucket to school. That was her lunch, and those kind of things.
Oh, that's very special. That's very special. And were there any games that you played that stood out for you?
I do have a favorite memory of that. My cousin Donna, her family traveled because her dad was a minister. So when she would come at Christmas, the special holidays, we were the same age and we would catch up. And our favorite memory was when we would get together at my grandmother's house, we would get Cokes. That was a special thing to have only on special occasions. So we'd have our little Coke. My grandmother had homemade ginger snaps, which were snaps. And I remember watching her make those. So the Coke with Coca-Cola with the ginger snaps would really fizzle, and we would take them and go to the upstairs bedroom and play Pollyanna. Have you ever played Pollyanna?
No,
It was a wonderful board game, and I have that board game. I made sure I got it when my grandmother passed away because it meant so much to me. But it was a fun game, and of course the memories of playing with my cousin and catching up with her. It was a lot of fun.
That's very special.
It is.
It's nice that you have something you can cherish too. That you know.
Oh yes.
A memory of that
time.
Mm-hmm. How old do you think you were when that? Do you remember your age at that time when you were playing that board?
Oh, we were young. I know, 6, somewhere in there.
Huh. That's really interesting. And then were there any other things that stood out to you, like entertainment or music that you remember that was, you know, part of your upbringing? Or?
Well, you have to remember in that time when I was growing up, late 50s, early 60s, social life was mainly at school or at your church.
Oh, okay.
So most of my memories and social things would have been one of those two things. And I have a lot of great memories at our church. Yeah.
Okay, and was that in this area?
Yes, right on Middle Street.
I ask you because you mentioned about the school, because then that was a middle school. Was it ever a high school, the one that's on Mill Street? Is that Mill Street or George Street where the school was back there?
Well, George and off of Roberts Mill,
Okay.
that's the junior senior, Taneytown Junior Senior High.
Okay,
Yes.
that was the school that you were talking about earlier.
Right, and then
Okay.
Taneytown Elementary is where the Taneytown Elementary School is. Of course, it's
Okay.
been remodeled. Yes.
All right, that's interesting. Do your family have anything that's like historical events that occurred or anything that stood out for you growing up?
Well, I do remember when I guess it was, in 1976, which would have been one of, the bicentennial,
Yeah,
or like that.
yeah.
Okay, they had house tours here in
Oh.
Taneytown, and one of the places we visited was Antrim, which is now the bed and breakfast.
Right.
And at that time, it was owned by a local family, but it was in disrepair and needed many improvements. But I remember walking through that, and I've been there since, and what a huge, huge difference that they've restored it.
And it's
Yeah, to
really-
its glory, yes.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and it's a big anchor of Taneytown, really. I mean, when you
Exactly.
think about that. That's funny, because during that time, you're right, people weren't really focused on renovations, and Taneytown really wasn't recognized as being an historic town at that time either, even though we know that
Right.
it's historic here. Huh.
There was something else I did. One of my
What?
first jobs here in Taneytown, the place no longer exists, but was called the Tawny Inn.
Oh.
And it's where the new Windsor Bank is now at the Y
Oh, yes,
in
yes,
Taneytown
yes.
on Main Street. And the Tawny Inn was a restaurant that served mostly on weekends, and it also served the Kiwanis and Lions clubs. And I worked there from Mother's Day till it closed that December for good. And it was quite a learning experience. And I remember I went to church on Sunday mornings, and I sang in the choir, and as soon as that was over, I was allowed to tiptoe out the back and go down and get ready to start serving at lunchtime. And that, they took a real chance on me. I was extremely young.
Right.
And I just said, let me prove myself. I'll do a good job. And so they started me on Mother's Day, which was the busiest day the whole time. But I have a lot of good memories there, and got some really good training, customer service, which is what I'm doing now. So I felt I had really good training there, and met some really nice people, some kids I went to school with, but in a different light.
That's a good segue then. Then I'll just ask you
Okay.
for the folks that are watching this right now, where are you working now?
I'm working at the Carroll County Public Library, Taneytown branch.
And how long have you been here? Move here with?
Yes.
Did you help put the books in the truck?
Well, yes, yes,
That
help
story
pack
you told
up.
me?
Yes, I was at the old branch on Main Street
Wow.
from July till we moved here in February. So I was at the tail end of that, but
Okay.
yes.
So then, now I heard that it was volunteers that helped move, that it was really
Yes.
a very hands-on experience.
Exactly. Like when you see someone putting out a fire, the bucket, the books went from one person to another person to another person into the shelf.
I wish we had pictures of that. Have you seen pictures of that?
I
or-
don't know.
No,
I don't know.
That's what someone, it was Phyllis that told me that you all did that.
Yes.
I'm like, oh my goodness, I didn't realize you were part of the
Yes.
experience. That's exciting. So then you walked in here when it was brand new.
Yeah,
Wow.
I did.
Wow. And then it would have been a big change.
It was huge. It was huge. I'm very proud of our library. I think it's one of the gems of Taneytown, and when people travel, I think that's when they realize what they have when they come back and see just how up-to-date we are and the materials we have and the people, the resources. People really realize what we have here in Carroll County, and I'm proud to be a part of that.
Yes.
Yeah.
I agree. Me too, Myra. And it's funny too, because when you said that, then we're now with the renovation and the new expansion, and now we're still having people coming in that haven't been in here since it was small. You can tell that we've regenerated that that interest in this
Right.
library, which is awesome. So you were part of that whole transition. Wow.
Yeah.
Now, you told me about your Pollyanna game. Do you have any other family heirlooms or treasures or keepsakes or memories that are very special to you from someone that you love in your family or friends or in the
I just have a
past?
lot of great memories. I was raised on a farm, and we raised chickens and turkeys for a living. And so we never took real vacations. We could maybe go away for the day if someone was there to feed. But other than that, we were on the farm, and I have an older sister and two younger sisters, and some of my best memories were we shared a bed, and we just giggled and would talk about things at night and just had a lot of fun. And of course, we did not have a lot of heat in our bedroom. It was upstairs, and it was the heat generated from the stove downstairs that came up. So we had some of the heaviest quilts you could ever think of, like weight. If you ever go to the dentist and they put the that weighted apron on you, well, that's how heavy these quilts were. So once you were in and covered up, you stayed that way, right, to stay warm. But yeah, I was so blessed. I just have had, I know we took corn in the fall and went out in the fields, and I know the accomplishment of watching my mom and dad make a living. And it was a hard life, but I didn't know it really was so hard because that's all I knew. But my parents worked extremely hard, and they just provided us with the best memories because it was that kind of life.
And that lifestyle, just having you sell them to us, it makes me realize that take care of your animals so you can. The luxury of a day is really a luxury, Now, I'm not saying that I wasn't jealous. Sometimes my friends went on trips, but generally, then when we did go somewhere, it was very special that we did it. But I just had a lot of fun. Loved summers. We played outside. The one thing my dad said, if you can't find something to do, I'll find something for you to do. So you never said you were bored. And we would go out and play and, just explore outside in particular, and just did all sorts of things so we didn't get bored to get a new job or something. But we just loved the summertime. Coming in, grass stains so ingrained in your feet that the water actually turned green at night. I mean, how good that felt to get all cleaned up again then. And of course, there was no air conditioning, so to cool off at night, you might have a fan blowing. But just super times in the summertime. I love it. Yeah. Yeah. Sounds wonderful. Sounds really wonderful.
Yeah.
And do you have any special family traditions that maybe were passed on from your grandparents or their parents onto you that you all do in your home, or you pass on to your children?
Nothing really stands out. We used to draw names like many families do, but then we started not doing that. But we do shopping trips, annual shopping trips, and they've always been the weekend of Thanksgiving. And York now doesn't seem very far away, but years ago, if you went there once or twice a year, that was quite a trip. So we always saved one for the holidays and just had a lot of fun. We'd shop, we'd meet back together, we'd eat, we'd shop, meet back together and eat. Yeah, so that was a lot of fun and still is today.
That's very fun, very fun. And I guess the other thing, do your family get together for family reunions, or do they hold it? Or your husband's family, your family, do you have family reunions?
We live very close, my family does now, so we get together always for the holidays and oftentimes for picnics or something. So I don't really have family scattered across the country that we get together they're mostly local, yes, and we're very close.
Nice, very nice. And that's fortunate too, I think, in a lot of ways.
I think so.
Yeah. And then, let's see what else. And I think we're going to go on to this other, and it talks about neighbors, which I think is interesting. Do any neighbors stand out for you?
Yes, our neighbors they had a milking farm, and we would get together. They had 2 daughters, and one was close to my age, so I would say once every 2 weeks or so, especially in the summer, we would get together, and I'd get to see how you milk cows and that whole episode. And I do have one memory. We would always go out to bring the cows in at that time, and you'd walk out through the pastures and so forth. Well, one time we actually walked into a nest of milk snakes. Ooh. And I can remember just all of us started running, but so the snakes, I think, were just more frightened of us than we were them, but they went scattering too. So to this day, I've always thought about that in that pasture, that there were milk snakes, and wasn't my favorite thing. I don't believe they're poisonous. Okay. It isn't that, but they are white, and they just really scattered, and that didn't do me any good. Right? Yeah. So you can do your milking, and I'll take care of the turkeys at my place. Yes.
Now you told me that you raised chickens and turkeys. Now were they part of your lifestyle? I mean, like you would actually, I guess you could say butcher. I mean, for meals. Okay. So you didn't get attached to them.
Oh no, and you didn't want to. People don't realize they're very mean.
Oh, they are mean?
Turkeys are very mean, and they can be
That's one of the books that really does sit on our shelves, and I have
Oh,
to get
really?
a new one to replace it, and I thought it was interesting. So there must be people still raising turkeys in this
Bronze
area.
turkeys are the black ones,
Okay.
and they have the strength. They could actually, with their wings, they could actually break your arm if they wanted to. So when my parents had to go to Baltimore, my dad was considered a huckster, so he would take eggs and produce and so forth to the city, and also had a stall at one of the markets in Baltimore. So on those days, believe it or not, my mom and dad entrusted the girls to take care of the farm, and we were quite young, actually. What a huge responsibility. I mean, if we didn't do it, my parents' income, we wouldn't have ate that year, you know.
Right.
So, yes, and I was scared to death of them. So my sister would go in carrying the feed, and I would have the stick, like, on guard, like this, you know, don't come near us, I've got the stick to beat them off.
Feeding you think they'd be nice.
Well, that's the thing, though. They're so hungry that they know you have the feed, and they just want the feed. You never wear anything shiny when you would go in. That attracts them, so you didn't wear a ring or anything like that, because they would peck at you. Yeah, it was not my favorite thing, but yeah. And we had to, you know, inoculate them. I remember that, and they'd have to burn off their beaks, and, you know, it was quite a process. But unfortunately, when the government came in and said everything had to be inspected, my father wasn't big enough to support a government person to stand there and give it stamp of approval, so he went out of business for that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Another sign of the times. You know, the
Definitely.
change.
Yeah. Good in some ways, but, you know, the little guy was put out of business.
And what about groceries? Do you remember your mother shop for groceries?
I do remember. You're going to love this. The old Taneytown Branch Library on Main Street was an Acme when I was growing up. It was one aisle down, and the meat market was in the back, and then you came up the second aisle and checked out.
No way. Myra, no one's ever said this. I have
Really?
no idea.
And one of my memories was that was when Does detergent and some of the other, maybe cereals or so, you know, one way to get you to try their product, they'd have maybe a cup or a glass packed in the packaging of it. And I remember, I think it was called melamine plastic when they first came out.
Yes.
Yeah, I had some of those cups. And I remember that was the neatest thing, you know, that we would all fight over, do I get this cup this time out of the box? You know, you'd have to fight for it. But yes, I do remember that. And it was kind of funny, you know, when you think how large our supermarkets are. We put everything up, though, on the farm, you know, and so you were in there mostly for paper products or, you know, maybe cereals.
Staples, right.
Right,
Yeah.
but everything else was, you know, on the farm or through your dairy person. But yeah, it was one aisle down. So that's why I do laugh, because I was in there many times before I ever was there working.
Oh, my goodness. So you had that memory when the library went in then. You remember
Oh,
how it was?
yes. Oh,
I had
yes.
no idea.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Is there a favorite place that you like to go in Carroll County now that it might be your, you know?
No.
No,
No, not really. I just think we live in a really beautiful county. Anywhere you take a drive, you're going to see something that's, you know, I like it being country. I like, as you can tell, I like being outside, and
Yeah.
I just think we have a, you know,
It is
it's just beautiful. Yes.
And did your parents still have the farm, or do they?
No.
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 So they let go of the farm and everything when they stopped?
Pretty
raising?
much, yes.
Okay. All right. So but is it
Yeah.
still a farm? Is it still intact? I mean, is it something you can drive by?
Actually, my dad built on a piece of the property,
Oh, he
so
did?
yes, I
Oh.
can still see
So
it.
it's there.
It's somewhat there, yeah. Of course, it's changed with time, like everything else.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's interesting. All right. So is there anything else that you're thinking of that you'd like to tell us that I haven't asked you about?
I guess I can tell you this. When I first went to the senior high school, it was a very small school, and everyone knew everyone. Of course, the town was quite small then, and everyone knew everyone. They had huge windows that the whole window lifted up, like a double window, huge window. And one day, I was on the bottom floor of the school in a home ec class, and I looked out, and a huge desk just fell out of the sky and landed outside. So in the room above us, the kids were having a good time and actually threw a huge desk out the window. And I thought, this is really strange. You know, you don't do that. And it was hilarious to me. Actually, you know, this is fun. This is what they do. Well, I'm sure they were punished for it. But the other thing that happened was the principal of the school, at one time, all the silverware in the school disappeared at lunchtime. There was no silverware to be found. And of course, they knew someone had it. And, you know, we're not replacing this silverware. You're going to do without. You know, bring your plasticware or whatever. Well, someone found the key to the principal's trunk, and the silverware was locked up in his trunk. And I don't know who did that. I really don't, but that is a true story.
That's a serious prank.
But in those days, they were harmless. No one was hurt. It wasn't that kind of thing. It was just kind of,
prank.
yeah, it was a prank. It was a prank. And no, I don't think they ever found out really who did it. But it was, you know, those upperclassmen, I guess, that did these funny things. But that was quite funny, yeah.
That is
yeah,
funny.
That was, yeah.
If you were going to, we'll start wrapping up. So if I was to say to you, Myra, what would you say to someone that was coming to Carroll County? What would be your favorite experience, or what you would tell them about what makes it so beautiful, what makes it so charming to live here? Could you think of anything how you would like to, you know, that would come to your mind?
Well, that's a hard one.
It is? I'm sorry.
I just think people in this day and age, most of my closest friends do not come from this area. And that's, I guess, what's happened in Carroll County. Many people live here because of jobs or so forth. I had been blessed that most of my family has remained here, but I've been very glad to be family to people whose grandmothers or aunts or uncles just weren't local. So at holidays and so forth, they did have an extended family here. And I think that was one of the big changes I saw growing up, was that they never grew up here. It was amazing to me. I mean, from all over. And they have remained here, though. That was strange. They liked it enough that they stayed here and raised their families.
That's pretty awesome. That's
Yeah.
very good. All right. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with us today, Myra?
Oh, I don't know.
It's okay.
This has been fun.
I'm glad you did it. I
This
really
has
appreciate
been
it.
fun. And I know it's been a great place to raise my family. And I think it's because mostly the people, the teachers and so forth, really were there for the kids, really wanted to see them succeed. So I thought the schools at that time were excellent. Like I say, churches in this area are very prevalent and very involved in the community. And that was always the case where I was growing up. I don't know what I would have done without that. Really, it was very important to me to have that. And I also grew up, my grandparents lived next to me. That was another thing that we don't see in this day and age, but I could run right across the road to my grandparents' house. So if my mother didn't have something, you know, whether it be a box or a ribbon or something, I could run over to my grandmother and she could usually come up with it. So I was very blessed. Didn't know it at the time. Thought that's the way families were, but yeah, so that was a real blessing to have that.
That's wonderful. And then now you mentioned your cousin Donna. Now, was she close by too? Or?
Donna lives now in an hour north of Atlanta.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
But growing up, was she in Carroll County then? Or
No,
was
not
she,
really.
so
They had
would
lived,
come-
right, they had traveled because of him being a minister. They were in Chicago and in California at one time, and I just thought she had the neatest life because she was exposed to so many things. But of course, when your cousin came back, you just fell right back in and you could tell each other anything.
And then you play your board game. at
And we
your
played our
grandmother's.
board game.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm sure she probably was like, wow, I wish I saw Grandma more than what,
Yes,
you know?
definitely. I could see that.
Yeah. It's a lot of love. And, you know, you miss that when you're on the road. But you're right. Thank goodness for extended families. And
I would share one more thing. I think it's so odd in this day and age, we don't get nearly the snows we had. But being a kid in Carroll County, the biggest thing was that they called for snow. And we had some really big ones then. I don't know if it's because of global warming or what's changed. We don't seem to have them. And of course now one flake and the salt trucks are out makes a huge difference. But if they were calling for snow, you look forward to it because you might have a day or two off from school. But it still meant you were out shoveling or doing something like that. But just so much fun when finally nature said, I want everyone to take a rest. And everyone did in those days, except even we were, I guess out the lane was the main highway, state highway, and you didn't see a plow maybe once 3 or 4 hours after the snow stopped. So you were really snowed in. If you were snowed, it did. So I love that.
That's
now
true.
we don't have it.
No,
It's
I
just
think-
more of a, people see it more of a oh, it's just a problem here, we can't get to work, school, or whatever, and, life won't go on if we don't get there. And I can tell you life did go on without doing all those things.
I think it's a great memory, too. I think you're
It
right.
is.
Being
It
snowed
is.
in is really
Yeah,
a
because,
good thing.
you had, and electricity went off, and you became very creative. And so that's what we did. And you never knew what the adventure was going to be. You never knew. You never knew, and it
Indoor,
was,
outdoor, whatever.
right, you didn't know. And it was so much fun. I think, the kids just miss it. I could go on, but, and I'm sure these games are great, but when you had to get creative yourself and come up with things, my goodness, the things we did.
And they were interactive. They weren't just
Oh,
singular.
my, yes. Definitely, yes. Very much so.
Well, Myra, we want to thank you again for being with us today and sharing your memories.
Thank you
And
so
with that,
much.
I guess we'll wrap it up, and
Okay.
thanks a lot.
You're welcome. Thank you.